Live long and prosper.
It's all too likely we won't be gathering for Thanksgiving, but we still have a shot at Christmas.
Can't stand Starbucks. I hate Starbucks, I don't really like them, and this is quite expensive. I find these really useful for me when I'm kayaking or camping. You could of course use them for bug out. I don't do that for bug out. For me, bug out is a very minimalist idea, and it's not something that I want to drag cooking equipment along with me, except in the winter. In the winter I would in fact have a stove, and I would in fact carry something like this. But for most of the year in Canada, I just want to have high energy fluids and foods and move as fast as I can at night to get to where I need to go. Not actually wanting to make it like a hiking fishing trip to feed myself as I bug out. Obviously if you're traveling 1,000 miles on a bug out, I would argue you're living too far away from your bug out place. But you would actually need to have a whole different environment and a whole different set of kit to try and get home. And I think that's one of the interesting with bug out. People talk about bug out bags, they talk about inch bags all the time. But a lot of people don't actually talk about the terrain, the seasons, the population, the probable threats, and how long they have to travel and how hard traveling would be. For example, in a situation of complete darkness, are you able to use a flashlight and a map and a compass and travel rurally off roads and get where you need to go to with a reasonable degree of accuracy? That's something I used to do a lot. We used to do a lot of stuff like that when I was a youth. Will I still remember it? I hope so. But I think what you need to do when you talk about map reading skills, when you talk about stuff like that, is can you actually navigate using a map and a compass at night when there's no moon? It's an actually interesting thing. A lot of people are using cars, they're using GPS in the cars, they're using GPS on the cell phones. I do not have a data plan on my phone, and the car GPS is not actually connected. We're so dependent now on technology, lights to make us look good, haircuts to make us look good, and all the rest of the stuff. Everything's, if it doesn't work, you buy a new one. It's not just a philosophical change in grid down, it's going to be an altogether different experience. So, as I said, one of the things I'm going to do is I want to focus on farming. Mr. Bezos is going to be finishing his breakfast. I want to focus on farming. I want to talk about climate change in farming. I want to talk about a whole bunch of different issues, to talk about realistic methods that people in various settings can do to actually prepare for what most people feel is an upcoming ending of civilization on a temporary or a permanent basis. It is not going to be a comfortable set of series because I have a huge bunch of deficits on this one myself, but I think it will be a series that will actually provoke thought and interest. And I do have some VRs I have to do back to people because Tyler from Let's Talk About Prepping did a really excellent one, and I do want to promote a Breather's channel because he actually is going out there and trying to make 3 million calories in a season so he can feed himself and his wife and his family in grid down using barren land. And that sort of thing, although he has some camera issues and stuff and has a very, very low subscriber base, they're the channels you actually want to be watching on a permanent or an occasional basis, rather than just 100% news channels. And by news channels, what I mean is channels that focus on the Civil War, focus on Antifa being evil and setting fires, focus on COVID being an infringement of your human rights. All of those weirdo channels that are pushing their agendas in a political way, claiming to be prepping, that in fact are not actually preparing you at all for any of this, in any way. And in fact are actually, I would argue, anti-American, a lot of those sites, because of encouraging people to see other Americans because of skin colour or politics as enemy. Whereas America, if nothing else, is about united. It's the United States, not the disunited States. And that's a big reach, but people have to give up power, people have to take power, people have to negotiate. It's a fluid and a dynamic thing. And I think most rational people looking into, as I am, from outside the United States, would say that they have a huge problem. And from a prepping point of view, arrogance is the huge problem. Everything is about them. Everything. COVID's about America. Like, it's a weird thing to actually see a people, at least being presented online, who are absolutely clueless that they live on a planet with a lot of other people.
We have contained this, I won't say airtight, but pretty close to airtight.
Everything that happens is about America. Everything that happens is about their gun rights, their political rights. Everything is connected to that. I hope people can figure out that that's probably not true. Nothing is actually about America unless it's about America, and they have a tiny population in a large planet, and they need to get a little bit more open in their news sources and what's going on, because at the end of the day, I'll probably dump all that, because maybe I'll use it for something else, but I don't think I'm going to go on an anti-American diatribe, because that's how they're going to hear it. It isn't an anti-American diatribe. I like Americans a lot. What I don't like is a large number of preppers who are American that see all prepping issues as an American issue. They never ever think about what do people in Britain do in grid down, what do people in Australia do in grid down, what's going to happen to Canada and Mexico in grid down, would that in fact affect them indirectly or directly. They never look at the geopolitical global picture except in terms of a diminution of American power. America is the strongest superpower in the nuclear age. That's irrelevant. It doesn't take much to end life on Earth. It doesn't take much to cause a massive problem with feeding populations globally for years, even if you've only got 50 nuclear weapons. That alone will trigger a nuclear winter of a diabolical outcome, which will make COVID look like nothing. So on that, I'm going to end this. I hope you enjoyed this. If you've got any suggestions for me, let me know. Like I say, I'm still pretty busy. I am going back to York University. I will be attending a couple of clinical days because I felt sorry for the students. It's advanced surgical practices, so they don't really have anybody to teach them how to do IVs and stuff. So I said I'd help out the teacher that's doing it, because she's basically on her own in terms of high-level skills, which are just basic skills, but everybody in university who teaches nursing really doesn't come specifically from an acute care background. So that's kind of why. And I will be wearing the N95, and they use face shields, which I found fascinating. Actually, they use goggles and gowns on top of normal clothing. So I said, well, I'll be wearing scrubs, and I'll be wearing an N95, and I'll be wearing a face shield, just so you know. She goes, oh, well, you look different from the students. I go, yeah, that's cool. There's a difference in hospital PPE, and I work at Sunnybrook, and I work all the time inside of COVID units and also go in COVID rooms. I don't feel particularly comfortable not wearing an N95 and a face shield in a social circumstance. So she said it'd be okay, they would try and keep me hidden away from the students. And I said, well, if any of them say anything, just say, oh, he works at Sunnybrook ICU. That usually works. I haven't had it not work yet. If people have said to me in stores, why are you wearing a N95, which has happened maybe twice, I just turn around to them and say, I work at Sunnybrook ICU, and they run off, literally. And at work at Sunnybrook, when they ask me why you wear an N95, I say, because I want to. And it's an airborne disease. That tends to shut down the conversation, because let's face it, if you have knowledge and you have equipment, you're going to use the best equipment you have, given the length of time that you're involved in the situation. In the past, healthcare has been about quickly resuscitating, quickly doing surgery, dealing with a specific issue. And I think one of the things COVID taught me, and I knew this already, but it's maybe dawning on people, is everything is integrated. Like, you close hospitals down to provide possible beds for COVID victims, you stop cancer surgery, you open up cancer surgery, and then you have more COVID victims. Where are they going to go? Everybody gets treated like their lives are very important, and yet we know everybody's life will end. So there's a whole bunch of issues there in healthcare. If we do get an April surge in Canada, which it looks like we might, that will be a huge problem. My hospital is completely overwhelmed as it is, trying to do the backlog of surgical cases. If we get another surge that we had in April again, there will be significant problems. And if we get a surge that's worse, it will be pretty bad. And I'm still at work, and until the Shire gets completed, we are not going to retire. So once the Shire is completed, this house goes on the market, hence the sanding, and then I will, in fact, sell this house and retire and go off into the pastures of new. I might keep some York work going, and I might go casual at my present job. They have a major staffing issue, but it would be very occasional. What I'm looking forward to do is what Kitty's doing right now, hiking and relaxing in a rural environment. Anyway, that's all for me. Toodles.
This fall, vote Conservative. Or you could vote for terrorist child pornographers. The choice is yours.
Meow. This was a very Sleepy Cat production 2020. Of course, Marmalade never sleeps.